I'm going to compare these two. I got a Callaway MAVRIK Max iron. Chunky, big, game improvement friendly. This is a top flight bladed club from the 80s. I did a blade v cavity video recently where we matched dynamic loft delivered to show you the difference perceived tech can or can't make. And thanks for all the great interactions, some brilliant comments on there, some brilliant threads, as well as the odd loopy one. So I'm going to test a modern club against a club from the 80s, and it's going to be slightly different today because we've got a different way of presenting the data. I've got a much bigger data set, and I've got a statistician involved, which is a lot of fun. Between us, we're giggling quite a lot. So old v new, blade v cavity, big data set, statistician, miss hits compared to centre hits. What is the drop off in these clubs? Maybe in the comments down below. What do you think the drop off will be between a blade and a cavity? And bearing in mind this is a blade from the 80s. So if I miss hit that blade compared to miss hitting a similar shot with a cavity back, what do you reckon the percentage drop off will be? Down in that comment section down below. Now before we get hitting, I asked this question, what do you think the drop off will be, to Twitter? Because you get people on videos posting comments saying, oh, but you can't compare blade to cavities because cavities are so much friendlier when you mishit it. And then I asked them to give me a percentage of the drop off in distance, and no one ever answers the question, almost as if they don't know. So I asked it to Twitter. Twitter seems a little bit more into asking or answering some questions. It was hard, but they did. So I had one here. So Toddy said 33%. That's a big one. Both clubs same loft. My guess is 8% from Graham. 40% from Martin. 40%? It's almost going to go halfway, is it? Paul says if they're the same loft, shaft length and equivalent strikes, less than 3%. So a very mixed bag, but the generalisation was kind of from around 10% up. So quite a big amount. So definitely lots of people believed if you mishit a blade to a cavity, the cavity and its tech is really going to help you. And that's cool. Let's go and test it and see what we get out of it. So let's hit these two. What I'm going to do, try and get this data set as even as possible, is I'm going to hit one with one, then one with another, then one with another, one with the other. So we don't get into any patterns, and then the patterns are quite even if they are. So I'm going to hit one with this, one with that, one with this, one with this. I'm going to try and hit as many as I can. I'm going to go for around 40 shots of each club. Now obviously when I put the Maverick down by the ball, it's big, it looks chunky, it makes me think, yeah, I can hit this. Makes me think I can do things with this club. It does make me think and feel that I've got a weapon in my hand that will help me, and the sound even kind of suggests that as well. Now when we come to this fella, there isn't much down there. It feels light in my hands, doesn't feel like it's going to help at all. The sound is obviously different. I caught that slightly nearer the bottom, so it felt like it would be at the front of the green, all those kind of ideas. Now the more I test clubs, yeah, I mean this is like a little clippy rocket, like it makes a little clip, like it's a nice sound, but it's like, you know, you hear that then makes you feel the stuff's going on. The more you test, the more you see how easy it is to card trick people. So I often think custom fitting lessens to a little bit of extent marketing, and I don't mean this in an underhand way, it's almost their job, but they're playing card tricks on you, and I always equate it to like forcing a card in a card trick. So forcing a card, you know what that means. I'm going to make you not know that I've got you to pick a certain card, that I know what it is, and then I can put it anywhere and do my little trick around it and guess your card. Now I've done this test quite a lot with good players, average players, everyone I've come across really, where I get them to hit shots, I say things about their shot, and then they reflect that back to me. And I try to make sure what I say about their shot isn't what the data that I can see coming out actually is. And I first started doing this probably 7 years ago when I started testing these ideas of which club is easier. I would get people in the studio, I'd get them to hit a club. Let's say at that time it was a ping club, chunky, one that they think goes up in the air, goes much higher, launches higher, People used to think they spun more as well back then. I know, that sounds crazy now. And I get them to hit the ping, look at the shot, and I would say to them, cool, that looks high, doesn't it? That's gone high, don't you think? And they say, yeah, that's gone high. Then I'd get them to hit their bladed club with their kind of S100 Tiger Woods shaft in it that they've got in their iron, and they'd hit it. I say, that's like lower, isn't it? Better flight, that's gonna do what you want to do. They go, yeah. They always, like, they kind of give back to you what you give to them. Like I'm forcing an answer out of them before they've seen any of the numbers. Then you look at the data, and there's half a yard in the height, peak heights of both of those clubs. And you ask them at 170 yards with their 7-iron or whatever they're hitting, do you reckon you can see the difference between half a yard? And they kind of smile at you. And I think it's a little bit like that with these clubs. I certainly look down at this blade and I think lower. I think I'm going to be able to do less with it, and it's going to punish me when I miss hit. I feel that, and the data might even show that. We'll see what comes out, because it's going to be an interesting data capture set here. Really looking forward to seeing how using a proper stats guy with a bigger data set disproves anything else that I've been saying for years. Like, I'm really looking forward to it. I love these kind of tests. I just want to keep learning each time. So it's great. I've got, got the stats guy, we've got a bigger data set. I'm not sure what other comments they'll come out with next. It's weird, isn't it? Definitely the Callaway. And this is not a thing about Callaway. This could be any, this could be any manufacturer's chunky iron, game improvement iron. Everything in my head is saying longer, higher, easier when you miss hit. Everything in my head that I know, my preconceptions of what I've been told, from what weightings do and a bigger club gives you confidence and not, all these things is making me think the blade is going to drop back and punish me, and the cavity, I'm giving that cavity to every one of my new golfers who come for a lesson. And you even feel that off the face. This feels slower, it feels shorter, lower, weaker. I don't even know anymore if I can feel more across the face, so where I hit it in different parts on the face with this compared to the jumbo club. I would have said I could, but maybe it's another test I could do. Again, blindfold me, where did I hit it with different clubs, see if I can tell any difference when I am missing the centre, because that's another thing people say, isn't it? It's one of those golf things, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, I've not really tested it enough, where you can't feel anything with these, but you can feel everything with them. So for learning, maybe better with them, some people say, and then obviously for learning better for these, because they're going to help you when you are dotting them all across the face. I mean, that's what every design element about modern clubs, which are chunky, is about, isn't it? Trying to help you when you're dotting it all across the face. So I've tried to hit them as close to the middle as I can each time, and what we're going to find with that amount of shots is my strike will dot around. It'll move 5mm up to 10mm, maybe even more, across the face. Now with that amount of shots, and over the year hopefully I can get more with some other different speeds as well to keep this kind of dialogue going, we should have some comparisons and work out which one hopefully is friendlier. Should we have a look at the data? So we're going to present the data in a slightly different way this time. First thing you need to understand is these are the different breakdowns of the strikes that we've got. So you can see we've got centre strike, which is a good strike, poor strike, and then very poor strike. So we're moving in one direction, or we're moving a combination around that face, away from that centre of that face. So first number to look at here is the carry. Two really interesting points out of the carry of both of these clubs. So you can see the averages are very similar. Not much in the average of carry. It's like 1 yard's difference in distance. The good strikes on the Callaway, the Maverick, definitely have the potential to go load further, but the poor strikes, you get a massive deviation from the longest to the shortest. And then in turn, what's really interesting is the good strikes, poor strikes, very poor strikes. Again, in the blade, really tight together, so really tight dispersion. And the very poor strikes on the Maverick, you go from as long as a very poor strike with the blade, but then have 3 huge drop-offs. So in the distance, it's really interesting from that data. Let me know what you think in that comment section down below from that scatter pattern there. Not much difference in distance, not seeing a difference in performance on miss hits particularly, apart from you do have a much wider spectrum when it comes to the Maverick. So consistency, arguably on the newer iron, is a lot harder. Ball speed's next. A little bit more ball speed from the blade. Now on average, again the black dots there. Good strikes, ball speeds, very close. Again, potential of a little bit more ball speed possibly out of the modern day club, but not much in it. Very poor strikes, again, very scattered with the modern day club in the Maverick, where the top flight iron, look how tight, yet again we see the ball speeds, which obviously reflects in that distance. When it comes to drop-offs on ball speeds and gains, you win and you lose with modern day cavity, where with the blade, wow, it's just tighter. Now if we look at the heights, you're definitely starting to just push a little bit more height out of the modern day club, which is something I would expect. Good strikes, very similar on heights on their averages. Poor strikes, you're just pushing a fraction higher on poor strikes with the modern day club, but again you still get the bigger spread. And then the very poor strikes, again you get a high one coming out of the Maverick, out of the modern day club, but you also get a low one. But on average, the very poor strikes with the blade definitely are now a little bit lower. So is this why we see that slight resulting distance being that fraction further, that yard further, where you get more dispersion in your heights with the modern day club? And again, it's tighter in the older club. You do get a little bit of help with that height, which then in turn might give you that extra 1 yard of difference in that distance. The spin numbers as we would expect. So we've got the top flight spinning much tighter again than the Maverick. Very poor strikes go from super high spinning to staying in the mediums, where the very poor strike with the top flight, definitely it's a little bit lower on the spin number. Good strikes, much higher spinning than the good strikes of the Maverick. Again, that's where we might see that little bit more distance, so they're changing that spin model. And then the poor strikes, again, so much tighter with the old top flight, where the modern day club, poor strikes are like 6,000 nearly revs down to getting down to 3,000. Again, you can see why the modern day club, with all its so-called help, is just so much more inconsistent on what it's going to do for you possibly. Launch angles, again, with the height, we see the modern day club having a slightly higher launch. We see the very poor strikes tending to be that little bit higher. The poor strikes definitely averaging a little bit lower in the blade. So definitely, if height is what everything you're after, launch, peak height, and then that fractional distance, that's really what you're getting from a modern day club over a 1980s blade. But we did a much smaller data set and got exactly the same readings out of what we're getting here, which is what's always so fun with these videos. And I will capture more data with more people, different speeds, different abilities, to see if the patterns change or not. That could be fun, couldn't it? Because at the moment, what we got from the first test is it launches a little bit higher, goes a little bit higher sometimes, then in turn spins less and goes a fraction further. It's no different with this test, but when it comes to mishits, we're not really seeing next to no difference in the resulting distance, which is the thing that people talk about, the drop off in distance when you mishit modern to old, cavity to blade. And you've got to remember, this is a modern day club to a 1980s blade. This isn't a modern day's blade, which would be closer. What was really interesting with this data is when I gave it to the stats guy who plays golf, like, he was giggling. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. And he's someone who follows the videos and has probably listened to me talk about these ideas for a long time. It's not until you do the test that you realise maybe how much we're often talking how the manufacturers want us to talk. That card trick is just working. It does just work. It's easy to force an idea on you. It's not until you test it that you start thinking, actually, how big a difference does it make? Post comments down below. What do you make of the data? Let me know if you like the way we presented the data here. I think it shows really clearly how distances, consistencies, certainly on the different strikes here, you can really see the difference. Basically, the modern day club, considerably less consistent to the bladed old-fashioned blade, where you were getting a much more consistent kind of spread across the face as you started to miss, or I started to miss, that sweet spot. Comments down below. As always, love to hear. Thanks for watching. Fun video, loads more coming from this. Let me know if you like the way we presented the data and you want to see more. You want to see more bigger data capture sets like this, because I think with different speeds, different abilities, we could just go deeper down this rabbit hole and show you exactly where you should be spending your money and where you should be spending your time and where you shouldn't be spending your money and maybe shouldn't be spending your time. Thanks for watching. Speak to you all soon. See you in the next